Good afternoon, good evening, or good morning, everyone, everywhere, depending on where and when you are joining Africa Online. Today is the 12th of July. We just finished our celebration for our 250th year of independence from Britain, and now we're going to be talking about post colonialism in Africa. Last week we talked about freedom versus independence. What did that mean? What does it look like? And this is a sequel to that conversation. But we are so delighted that you have joined us today. Anyway, outside my door, it's kind of dreary. The sun is not really shining. It's been kind of gray, but there's a nice breeze blowing. So I'm not going to complain at all. So, what's it looking like outside your door? Anyway, we welcome you to Africa Online. And at this time, we will hear from our co host, Professor Nia Sung. How are you, and what's it looking like in your neck of the woods?
Looking gray like in your place, but the sun is shyly showing its face, and we think that it's not going to be a bad day, but it's going to be hot. It's getting to 80 degrees already. So we will keep watch and continue to pray that things be just as they are, if not get better than this. That said, thank you and welcome to the conversation today. Sunday, July 12th, which features a mix of historical, cultural, and fun observances. Standing prominent on this day in our discussion table, in my notes, is Malala Day. Remember Malala? Well, established by the United Nations to honor Malala Yousafzai. That was her birthday on July 12th, 1997. That's when she was born, I think. Celebrating her advocacy for girls' education in general and her survival of a Taliban assassination attempt on her life in those days. The attempt was in 2012. She later became the youngest Nobel Peace Prize laureate in 2014. And since then, we celebrate her birthday on the 12th of July. What a girl. She grew up and she's already doing things around the world. Today, July 12, 2026, is the 193rd day of the year. There are 172 days left in this year. Today is the 28th Sunday of 2026, and it is the 22nd day of summer, meaning that we have 73 days left before autumn or fall. Today, Africa Online Media Corporation, we heard our co-host say, we're treating a topic post-colonial Africa as a sequel to last week's discussion of freedom versus independence. By itself, the post-colonial period occurred or existed after the end of colonial rule. When we figure that out, we will let you know. But it was something historic, but then it turned out to be a double-edged sword, if I can say it that way. In general, it means that the post-colonial era is that period after most African countries gained independence, particularly Africa, because it had the greatest chunk of countries that gained independence, gained independence in quotes. That is when new states faced the political, economic, and social legacies of colonial rule. In the history of Africa, it covers a period of nation building, elite leadership, and debates over identity and development. So, what is the post-colonial era? We question every day because it's still as prominent as it was in the 1950s and in the 1960s. We will get there by reminding ourselves that colonialism or colonialism in itself is something else. Colonialism, we have come to understand, is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country and exploiting it economically. It is also the domination of a people or area by a foreign state or nation. The post-colonial era in the history of Africa is the period after colonies became independent states, especially after World War II, and the wave of independence in the 1950s and the 1960s. It is also just, quote, after colonialism in a calendar sense. It is the long, difficult process of building a new country while still living with the institutions, borders, economies, and inequalities that colonial rule left behind. That leaving behind has gone on for years, in most cases over 60 years. The post-colonial era continues to be as prominent as it was then, as it still goes on today, although independence had been attained on paper as seen through a proclamation, the raising of a new flag, and the enthusiastic chanting of a rallying song, or call it the national anthem. At this point, I will want to know if our co-host can take the microphone and let us start the conversation. Colonialism or post-colonial Africa, what is it all about?
Yes,
Is it
thank
what
you
I'm
so much.
saying?
Thank you so
Yes.
much, Professor Nia Sang. Um, on behalf of Africa Online, we like to welcome one of our regular frequent guests that we so enjoy in the person of the Honorable Stan Straughter. He happens to be one of the most most knowledgeable, friendliest, warmest people I know. And it is an honor to have you on the show today. Honorable Stan, we have invited you to come help us talk about post-colonialism. Now, we do understand that post-colonialism looks at the effects of the empire. It looks at reclaiming liberty, challenging some of the stereotypes that were in existence back then, and just trying to shake off the old that was left over. How do we move forward? What does it look like? And let's hear from you. I need you to just move over in your phone a little bit because we only see part of you. There you go. Now we can see you all.
Okay.
Wonderful.
Well, thank you very much, Reverend Pam and Prophetess Lisa Parks and the professor there. It's always wonderful to be with you. And I'm honored to have an opportunity to speak with you always, but especially on this subject because we're still living in post-colonialism today, 2016, believe it or not. And it's good to have
2026.
I'm
Yeah.
2026. That's right. It's
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
great opportunity to have us continue to explore, but just as important to provoke our own thinking about how does it proceed, how we are impacted by it today, as well as what do we see the future to look at. Let me just take one step back, and thank you for the professor for giving us a great summary. I do want to just step back for 1 second and say, don't forget the way we came about colonialism was exact part remnants of the slave, the most oppressive and horrendous tragedy in humanity, the Atlantic slave trade. And some people say the numbers between 20 and 20 million Africans suffered and were thrown overboard in those years, the active years of the slave trade between what we now call the United States and also Africa. The
Yes.
uh, that unfortunate thing led to in 1884, I think it was, the Belgian king called all of the white leaders together in Europe, and there was not one African in the room, and said, "Hey, we need to stop fighting each other and organize, and let's all exploit them." And this King Leopold was notorious because he used the Democratic Republic of the Congo as his private pocket of wealth. He's notorious also in the fact that he was known to cut off people's arms and mutilate them to continue the level of exploitation. And you guys can get some reading on that too. But that was part of the depths of the pain and suffering that these people put our people through. I don't want to also say that it was in Europe, it was Europeans, but they all in Africa. But remember, in 1779, between 1779, I mean, in 1802, the great Haitian leader Toussaint Louverture beat Napoleon not once or twice and freed Haiti in this struggle against colonialism. And Haiti still pays a price for that, for beating this white guy today. He's still paying a price for it, unfortunately. But as we move into the period of what quote unquote we call post colonialism, it was the new name for it was neo-colonialism. It was a new side of colonialism because people clearly understood, as the professor pointed out, that their economics of their respective African countries was tied to the metropole, the large countries, the European countries that dominated them. For instance, France got 16 West African countries, including the Ivory Coast, Senegal, Cameroon, Rwanda, and so forth. Britain, of course, had great Kenya, but it also had Ghana and a number of other countries and so on. In fact, post-colonialism just not eased in. People gave it to you. The Jomo Kenyatta in Kenya, Walter talked about in his book, Facing Mount Kenya, how they had to fight revolutions and even kill their own people to get freedom from the Europeans. Of course, Ghana, led by the great Kwame Nkrumah, who went to university here in Philadelphia. He
Yes.
studied here with the great Marcus Garvey. He read and studied. So I always say, people, not jokingly, but for real, here is Kwame Nkrumah came here to the United States, went to Lincoln University, graduated, and stayed, went to University of Pennsylvania, got a PhD, stayed here for 10 years. And when he went back to Ghana, he broke the back of the British imperialism, the most powerful system in the world at his time. Of course, he and many others like the great Secretary in Guinea, they all paid a horrendous price for fighting the European colonialism and seeking freedom for their people. In fact, uh, Secretary in Guinea said, "Listen, I'd be better off being poor and free than being rich and a slave." And when the French gave or submitted to the leadership of Secretary in Guinea, the French went into Guinea and took out everything, including the light bulbs. Including the light
Including light
bulbs.
bulbs.
Yeah.
Wow.
They didn't want to have any opportunity to replicate or to replace anything that the French did. In fact, the French continued even to this day. You may know that our great sister, Ambassador
Americana?
Chimborae and
Yes.
Jacqueline Kenyatta has written a book on how the French continue to this day to take out
Yes.
$500 billion a year out of the Francophone African countries. All this is documented, so please, if you doubt my word, just go get the book.
I got the
She's
book.
written about it.
Yes.
And there's also another book called Tropical Bandits. That book is written by a development expert, and he talks about how the World Bank exploits African countries by the programs that they design to
Wow.
make them come in line with the global system. In fact, the professor pointed out the role of the system after the war, and you might remember that the World Bank and those things were set up. They was established to rebuild Europe and not Africa. And what they were called the Bretton Woods system, the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. And so those things are now being used to exploit the continued exploitation of African countries and the colonized nations. I don't want to take away from the fact that even the Caribbean and Latin America was exploited at this time, and with similar things that were going on to what was going on in Africa. So this was a global system of the white European countries to exploit the rest of the world and build wealth, simply to build wealth. So we are now in a stage at this day where I'm so sorry that many of the African leaders that led us out of colonialism to post-colonialism were murdered. You may know that the great young leader Patrice Lumumba of the Democratic Republic of the Congo was assassinated. But he had gone to the United Nations. He spoke in the United Nations about this problem, but he was assassinated when he returned home. Of course, great Kwame Nkrumah talked about. He was one of the leading proponents, and even now today, he's a scholar. His works are still primary for everybody who wants to talk about the global African diaspora and coming together. He said, Africa is not, you're not in Africa, Africa's in you. He's one of the great
Yes.
exponents of the diaspora and the global government, and also the Organization of African Unity, which ultimately became today what we celebrated as the African Union. These were some fantastic scholars, and I could go on, obviously, in those, but let me just stop, Professor and Prophet, to see if these have any questions before I move on, okay?
Thank you so much, Stan, for that introduction into probably information that most of us are not even aware of. Uh, a lot of our young people, because history is not being taught and they're trying to erase our history. Most of our young people have no idea that Africa had a history or has a history. They don't even realize that we here in the diaspora have a history that does not start with slavery. We go back. We're all parts of royalty, and I'm just looking forward to seeing us finally free. Now, I do have a question. You were saying that in 19, well, I'm not even going to try and remember dates, but you said it was King Leopold who called together the white leaders to come and split up and divide up Africa. When they came to Africa, they found Africans in royalty. They found them in royal places. They found them with their own language, their own cultures. What made them, if you know, what made them think that it was okay to go and try and take over because they didn't understand our language or what it is that we were doing?
Well, we have several theories about that. But let me say first and foremost, before they took over, these people did know that the history of Africa, and in particular Kemet, Sudan, predated the Europeans being civilized by thousands of years
Mm-hmm.
themselves. You know that the Moors, the Black Moors, fought and took over and ruled Europe from 711 AD for 700 years. So,
Mm.
and they taught these white people how to clean themselves, how to wash themselves, how to sanitize themselves. They educated them. The Moors brought into Spain great universities, the Alhambra, which is, still exists there today. These were some very learned, they were warriors, but they were very learned people. And at the same time, they were able to spread that learning to help what now when we look at back in Europe, we talk about the Renaissance, but it was the Moors that brought in and laid the foundation for the Europes to even have a Renaissance, to live a Renaissance. So that's a history that, Professor, we need to probably get somebody. I would refer you to the great Professor Ivan van Sertima, who is an expert on this area and has written extensively on the 700 years that the Moors ruled
Oh,
Europe and
wow.
Southern Europe. Okay, but that's one. Secondly, they had many. Remember, the French that went to um, Egypt or Kemet, and they also saw the Great Sphinx, the
Yes.
pyramids, and they saw those entities that were Negroid. They called it Negroid, but they was built by black people. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
the,
Yes.
the Egypt and the Sudan, all of those were very, very much black civilizations that preceded the Greeks even by thousands of years. In fact,
Mm-hmm.
you might want to pick up a book about from Dr. Ben Hackerman, who has written extensively on this in his work before he passed away, and also the great John Professor Clark, who has written on this, and of course our own here in Philadelphia. I don't want to overlook him, the great scholar Dr. Maleficate Asante, who's a commit expert and has talked
Yes.
about the thousands of years that civilization of black people, especially those in Africa, preceded even the Greeks who were really the first culturally. But even the Greeks left Greece, the first European civilization left Greece and went to Egypt to learn and study. And that's where Homer writes about this in his book, Going to Greece, and talked about the people going to Egypt and talked about studying there. Many of these things
Right.
preceded the Greeks and of course the Romans for many years. So they were aware, but by using and being able to control the knowledge of the Europeans, and when the slavery system became at its peak, starting at not just at 1400, from 1619. Our sister writes a book about the 1619 project when the slavery became the first part with the Portuguese. So our history, and you're right, Professor. We have to realign our history. That's one of the things we have to struggle with,
Yes.
because our great scholars today say that it's not only the land and the wealth, but it's our minds that we have to recreate. We have to recapture our minds, our intellect, and the fact that our people not claim that we're any more superior than any other people on the planet, but the education, the knowledge that the world benefits from the day was initially started in Egypt, Kemet, and all of Africa. And all humanity came out of Africa. All
Yes.
humanity. I'm not, that's a book you can pick up by Dr. L.S.G. Leakey from Kenya, he and his family studied this. So all these things are well documented. And to
Yes.
the extent that we can share this kind of information, which I appreciate you for, but also the writings, the legendary writings and scholarship that was done by these great leaders I've talked about, and also the definitive work is written by the great Sheikh Anta Diop, who I'm not a scholar, I won't even claim to be, but many of our great scholars studied under him and studied his work. He not only was able to definitively show by carbon dating that the leadership in Egypt was black. He also has written extensively during this time and trained a number of people, scientists, in his methodology, which is still he and his colleague debated this subject at the United Nations Education Forum, and just blew him away. So as I said, this is a
Wow.
documented uh, work, and I'm glad to be able to document it. And I've had a chance to read some of this, but like many of you, I just had to study. I sit under the professor's table and sit and listen too, because this history is still being being written, and each time we continue to learn more and more. Right now, I would say, Dr. Ambassador, we are witnessing right now the fact that many African countries, Nigeria, Benin in particular, are forcing the Europeans to bring back the great historic ancient artifacts
Yes.
that were stolen from their countries in colonial times.
Yes.
So there is some reckoning going on, maybe not quick enough, maybe not fast enough, but that history that you talked about has been stolen, and we need these countries are fighting to have those documents to come back to their country. So I just stop there before we move on, okay?
Yeah, I did see. I just read this week, if I'm not mistaken. I want to say Switzerland, or maybe it was Australia. I'm not sure, but I know some country was giving back artifacts that they had for centuries. They were packing them up and sending them back. I just can't remember which countries was giving them back, but I do know that they have been an outcry for the reclaiming of the things that Oh, it was also, I think it was Ghana.
Mhm.
It was
I think
someone.
I
It
think
was
you're
a
going to find
king.
that it's going to be Ghana, certainly Benin, also Nigeria. There's many of them. Even and Egypt, of course, has got reclaiming many of its things because they have a new multi-million, maybe it's $1 billion museum that's been just completely opened last year in the in Egypt. It was phenomenal. So it's
Wow.
working. It's not working. It's not going fast enough, but we are in that movement. That's why I continue to say during this discussion, we are still in a post-colonial period, and the opportunity for us to continue struggle is around our education right now. When you
Yes.
see books being banned here in the United States of America, you can imagine what's going on in many countries, especially across the Africa continent. We do have a few efforts that I'm aware of where leaders in these countries are saying, how can we be independent? And when we're still using the European curriculum to educate our
Mm-hmm.
youth for. And this is across Africa, whether it's the Francophone countries or Lusophone, meaning Portuguese, or even the English-speaking countries. They're still using books and dictionaries that come from those countries, as opposed to actively exploring and studying the history of their own people, the
Mm.
continent there. So, but you have some major uh, exponents of this particular education thing. Of course, Dr. Malefi Asante has written several curriculums, but those curriculums haven't even been accepted in the U.S. institutions.
Right.
Only a few, but there is a movement going around the world now, and it may take some more time, but the movement of this independence is consistently important. I don't want you to think that people say, "Oh, why you can't eat?" But the education that we receive is one of the very basic elements that continue the control of our people and other previously colonized people. I will refer you to I will refer you to the great writings of uh, uh,
Oh,
You're
Dr.
breaking.
wait,
Francois
wait a minute. You were
Fanon, "Wretched of the Earth," black skin, black.
what?
Can you hear me?
Stan.
Yeah.
You're
Yes.
you're breaking up as you're giving us the names of these books. You're breaking up. So
Oh, okay. I would say the great psychologist, Dr. Francois Fanon, who wrote a book called Black Skin, White Mask. He wrote Wretched of the Earth, how colonial people uh, were treated by the Europeans, and that his works helped to lead to the overthrow of France in Algeria. He was also, you have to continue reading the works of, go back to Dr. W.B. Du Bois, who wrote
yes,
about the duality of Black people and how we enter the world with two sides, two faces. It's really the same kind of thing. The most important thing, though, is to really understand where we are and what work we need to do in the education dialogue, in the curriculums. And I think there's a number of scholars debating and looking at these things now, because we now have a global movement called Afrocentricity, led by Dr. Malefi Asante, Ryan Karinga, many scholars that are looking at this and look at Afrocentric worldview now. And you can look at either one of their websites and see more definitively what those things are. But the question is, of course, we as Black people and other people have a worldview that's different from the dominant one that we go to school to learn about. I went
right.
to Temple University, and I learned about Socrates as being a great philosopher, Plato, Aristotle. I guess I was damn near 40 years old before I knew we had any Black philosophers,
Mm-hmm.
historians, like Professor said earlier, we don't get taught that, and you have to independently go study and find this information. So we do have them, but the idea is how do we continue to make them a part of the regular curriculum? Because they have brought to us a different world of thought, a
Yes.
different global outlook. And as I begin to read and learn about myself, you can see how in some of them, the question of independence, the question of humanity, and you raised one thing, Ambassador Lisa, about how did they come? Well, I mean, we were probably warring people to protect our turf, but we're also a welcoming people.
Yes.
Many
Very
of these
friendly. Yes.
yeah, many of these Europeans came in, they took advantage, and while some were trapped in a thing, but they took advantage and sought how they could make profit from their own people, selling their own people, when it went on. So it was not just singularly somebody say, "Hey, come on, we're gonna make you some money." It went on, and it went on for hundreds of years. So
Wow.
these are the
So
things we have to unravel
undo,
in our.
unravel, undo, unthink, unlearn.
Exactly, exactly,
So
exactly.
I have a library in Nigeria, and I was writing down some of these books, and I'm going to, while we're in the process of building a new space for it, I'm going to make sure that I find some of these books and put in, and have
Yeah.
some of these books put in the library there. I
But
find that there are hardly no, huh?
don't forget now, you have the first African Noble laureate is Ole Selinka. You have to get some of his works and put it. He's Nigerian, and you have many more that we just don't know about. But they're great writers, and during our liberation movement, even here the civil rights movement that parallel the downfall of apartheid. And downfall of apartheid and post-colonialism, many of those people like Nkrumah went to school here. The first president
Yes.
in the United States, the first president of Nigeria, went to Lincoln University. Okay,
Oh, I
we
didn't
have,
know that.
yeah, yes, yes, yes. At Lincoln University, you'll see the Nkrumah Ezekwe House on Lincoln University's campus. So
Okay.
it's just something phenomenal that you do. But you also had several other Blyden, who went to school here in Philadelphia, but also became the head of state in Sierra Leone. We have many of them. Which that's another thing that's not widely known, but think
Oh,
it's
we may
it's
have to
something that we
explore
have to
that.
look at because I
Yes.
just continue to say, oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, listen, we just celebrated not we, but Lincoln University just celebrated the great scholar Dr. Nero Sadakasa, who was one of the presidents of Lincoln University. Just set up an international center on Lincoln's campus in her name several years ago. Who was not only the president but a great scholar, Afrocentric scholar herself, and that helped educate many of us. But you got to also Nkrumah when Nkrumah was. At Lincoln University, you had people like the great Langston Hughes were there. And can you imagine being on a campus with Langston Hughes,
Mm-mm.
Kwame Nkrumah, and so many other people that went to school during those years? I mean, these guys were contemporaries. Uh,
Yes. Yes.
and
Hmm.
the wonderful work of Dr. Du Bois, of course, in the 1945 Pan African Congress in London, where you had Nkrumah, Du Bois, Jomo Kenyatta
Wow.
in a meeting. I mean, could you just imagine just sitting on the outside of that door? But the 1945 conference was one of I think that was the third conference in a series of ones that Du Bois had helped to organized and himself. But there has not been a time since our people have been in captivity that there hasn't been a struggle to liberate
Right.
our people. And some of those struggles have been violent at times because that's the way the system has forced them to react. Also, let me go back to Africa for a minute because it just reminds me that before there was Zimbabwe, there was Rhodesia, and Rhodesia
Right.
was the important part of Rhodesia is that the people that won that struggle against the Rhodesians, the white Rhodesian right ruling class, they fought and fought and fought and became Zambia at one part and then
Hmm.
Zimbabwe to help once the people got control of the land. So I don't want to forget the fact that we talked about the more popular countries, but remember, Namibia, the Germans mutilated the Namibians, slaughtered over 100,000 people. And you might remember not too long ago, I guess within the last couple of years, Namibians were talking about reparations, and the Germans offered some ridiculous number, and it was rejected. And they fought it for. They went back and forth about reparations. And I think Namibia ultimately received something like $3 or $4 billion, which still wasn't enough. But the idea of asking for reparations for the slaughter and the genocide that was imposed upon the Namibian people. And of course, you had Botswana, one of the
Mm.
diamond regions of the world, uh, suffered at the hands of the Europeans. And almost in every country, of course, of this period, you had them. But there's some reckoning these days. It's still more to work, but I don't want it to be seen as if uh, these these leaders are still being bamboozled. They have problems they have to deal with. And you have a country like any of these countries where you got 20, 30, 40, 50 million people, those people got to eat, survive.
Yes.
And you, as a head of state, you have responsibility. And I'm sure that many of them are taking responsibility very seriously. But the world is not going to sit by and let them idly become rich and use their
Right.
own wealth for themselves.
Right.
Most recently, you have the countries of Mali, Chad, Niger that have broken away from the French system and kicked them. Actually, they kicked the French out. They are now called the AESE countries. And when Niger is one of the major producers of uranium. And the French controlled that for decades and decades. And as soon as the Nigerians took over that, took over that material, they begin to sell it on the open market, and they now have enough resources to build schools and hospitals. The same thing in Burkina Faso,
Yeah.
where the young head of state is building schools and hospitals faster than they've ever been built. And white people are supposed to expose us to all of the great technology in the world. So there is a turnaround. It's going to be work,
Thank
but
God.
I understand that there's been over 500 attempts to assassinate the head of state of Burkina Faso. Even
Over 500.
over 500 attempts since he's been there, and it's not over. It's not going to be over. But we're witnessing, and I think we meaning Africans and African Americans and people of conscience and that believe in justice have to come together to fight for
Yes.
advocacy of peace and leave these people alone. Let them do what they got to do.
Yes. Yes.
We're already shown what the intervention of these quote unquote white people have done. So leave them alone. Let the people use their wealth to support themselves. Okay. So we as Americans have to fight for that, even though we have to fight for our lives in our own communities. Yeah. So
Wow.
thank you.
Thank you. My prayer daily, because I have international ministry, my prayer daily is the leadership of our countries. I'm crying out to God every day for the
Mhm.
leadership of these countries, that they would turn their hearts back towards their sons, the sons and daughters that they have responsibility for. So I thank you for sharing how some of these countries are standing up and they are taking back their authority and they are gaining reparations for the things that have been done to them. So I'm going to turn it over to Neosang for a question if he has one.
I was just going to ask. I'm sorry, under the weather, so I'm really sneezing and coughing. So
Yeah.
not really my best day to be on this program today, but I have to do what I have to do.
Yes.
Our guest, please, let me ask you this question. Do you think that the three Sahelian countries are succeeding because they have military rulers? Should Africa go military so that they can boot the colonial masters and regain their real independence?
Well, obviously, being in the West, I certainly am an advocate for democracy. But you have to look uniquely at the situation of those three countries. And the north of them is Libya, where they've been fighting. And those people up there are coming down to disturb and disrupt what's going on in those countries. So not to justify the military leaders of those countries, but what are they? How can they fight off those people? And that's one of the things that had happened in Niger and also in Mali, where the people from the north coming down from Namibia. I'm sorry, not from Namibia, but from Libya, and
Libya.
those people are coming from from areas of the north where they were fighting. Unfortunately, during the time that the former president of Libya, before he was assassinated, he held those people in check.
Yeah, Muammar
He had
Gaddafi. Yeah, Muammar
Yes,
Gaddafi.
Gaddafi. He held
Yeah,
those people in check. He had wealth. He had hospitals, and schools. He were educating people free in his country. So now those people for coming from Libya, they're looking for work. They're looking for money, and so if they can't find it in Libya, they're coming down to those other countries, Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, all across that desert there, and that's what's contributing to the destabilization. Also, there were some rumors, as you may know, Professor, that even the French was funding some of these rebels to go into these countries and destabilize the government.
of
So I just don't want to look at it and say, oh, democracy, yes, 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 I support democracy, no problem. But however, what these people are up against now is horrendous what they have to suffer because of the
Yes.
destabilization and what has happened
Yes.
in the north of Africa right now. So,
It is. It is. It disturbs me so much.
yeah.
Um,
what we
Stan,
now
let me
know,
ask.
is that the French have failed in their mission to colonize and master the countries that they took over. Unfortunately, they have not succeeded in doing exactly what they intended to do, what they've been doing, because the young are rising up. The younger people are beginning to shout louder than the French wanted them to shout. So the French are beginning to think twice before they do certain things in the
Mhm.
countries. Unfortunately, their money is still there. The money. I think the French franc. Well, not the French franc, but the franc, the CFA franc, is controlled, printed from Paris, and only sent to Africa, to those 14, 15 African countries as something they pay for. They buy it. So it's unfortunate that the French are doing what they are doing, but they are learning their lesson from the three Sahelian countries, Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali.
Yes, yes, yes. That's correct. That's correct. Mhm. And
You know.
that's the other reason why it's important for us here in the United States to understand the nature of this exploitation, so we won't be fooled into believing that these guys are just messing up over there. They have to protect their people. They have millions of citizens that need food and clothing and jobs and industry, and that's nobody looks at that and see what they're really doing with the money. As I said,
Mhm.
I'm not. I'm not. I read every day what's happening in Burkina Faso, Mali, and also in Niger. They're
Niger.
building hospitals. They're building schools. Something that the French did not do.
Right.
Yes. And yet they controlled their money. They controlled their money. They printed
Yeah.
their money. They
So
exported. They took up all the resources, the natural resources, to Paris and to their country, but they never gave back to the people of the countries.
that's very,
Now,
very true. Very true. Very true.
do you know, Stan, why it seems like the north of, not just the north of Africa, but the north of most of the countries in Africa are Islamic? Why they seem to be full of Islamic Muslims, terrorists? It seems like it's always in the north where we have these problems.
Well, let me say first of all, given the fact that many of these countries are Islamic, is due to the conquest of the Islamic countries that came down from Turkey and all of there down into northern part of Africa. That's even as right now, the Arabs in Egypt are not indigenous to that country. They came from the Middle East and came down to Egypt and owned it. The Arabs during the Jesus time or the bidding, they were Afrocentric. They were African people that came, and those people were pushed back and back and back during these over 600 years back, fighting back and forth. So those people, you have to learn. I mean, look at that and see why it is. But I think Islam was their prevalent religion, but at the same time, remember the great Crusades. The Crusades were between the Christians coming out of Europe
Hmm.
against the Islamic dominant communities that existed in north of Africa and beyond. So this is not a new struggle. It's been there, but as a result of these years of conquest and wars, many people were adapted Islam, and more importantly, it may be an indigenous religion, especially on the eastern part with Kenya, Tanzania, all those countries. They were they were practicing Islam a thousand years before the Europeans even got there. So this is just not new, but I think through intermixing and, of course, conquest, they became the dominant. I will say this to you though, that especially in West African countries, I have not been to many of the East African countries other than Kenya, but especially in West Africa, they have adopted Islam to fit their own intelligence and where they want to practice. So you will not see too much mixing. I know they have this. I have one of the great Muslim leaders from Senegal. He's in Philadelphia right now. I'll be with him tomorrow, and that was one of the points he made about the how the Black Muslims have actually adopted and helped to look at the practice from their respective points of views in Senegal and in many other places, Guinea across it. So it's something I'm learning about. I'm not expert in that area, but I'm learning about the uniqueness of the way it's practiced. But I think that's how part of where they got there.
Hmm.
In fact, one of the things I mentioned the Moors when you read Dr. Ivan Vesertima, his writing is about the 700 years that the Black Moors conquered everything in Southern Europe. He writes about that and writes about all of the great traditions that in education and universities that were left there and people were educated in. So that's a great thing. You might even get him on YouTube or something. I have seen him there. Okay.
Well, you know what, Stan, I'm going to get a list of some of these names. I just love the fact that you are so fluent in some of these African names. I'm always butchering somebody's name. I always asking them to forgive me, but you're just so fluent in these names. But I'm going to need you to send me like a list of some of these professors and scholars and philosophers that you mentioned. I got some books. I didn't get any names because they were just too much, but I did get a couple books. Facing Mount Kenya, Tropical Bandits, something by Ben Hakaman, the
Yeah,
16.
Ben Hockerman was at Dr. Ben Hockerman was at Temple University for many years. He helped with the African Studies department there.
Oh, okay.
Yes,
Okay.
you might want to make sure you get one of. Just go online and look up something with Dr. Malefi Asante. He's written over 105 books.
Now,
He's Philadelphia, right on Germantown Avenue. He's one of the world-renowned scholars on
yes.
Afrocentricity and Africology, and
And
he's a specialist.
he started the African department at Temple, correct?
The first one in the United States of America. That's correct.
Yes, yes. I remember him.
Yeah,
I have the 1619 Project, Black Skin, White Mass, W.E.B. Du Bois, and the 1945 Pan African, I believe you said it was a Pan African Congress.
conference is a Pan African conference, and that was organized by uh,
Du Bois.
Dr. Du Bois. You might want to. He's written several things on it, but I don't want to leave out the great Dr. Kwame Nkrumah because
Oh no.
he's written on consciousness. He wrote on imperialism and how Europe continued. He's written on a bunch of things, and his example of wanting to talk about the unity of Africa. He was invited by Sékou Touré to become the co-president of Guinea when Nkrumah was overthrown in his own Ghana. By the
So
way,
they
there's
wanted him to be co-president of another country?
Guinea. Yes, yes, yes.
Wow.
Yeah,
I never heard of
yeah.
that before.
Well,
So,
yeah. You might also want to pick up a book about Guinea. It's called "Revolution in Guinea" by Amilcar Cabral, the great advocate there. But that's what I mentioned. I mentioned that earlier, uh, Ambassador. That we hear about the great philosophers but we have great African philosophers and
Yes.
African and Caribbean scholars that have written on this. I mean, as great as Marcus Garvey is, we have a bunch of them. Eric Lincoln from Trinidad, have the great scholars from the Caribbean who have written, and C.L.R. James was one of the teachers and advisors to Kwame Nkrumah, along with Dr. W.B. Du Bois. Remember,
Mm-hmm.
Dr. W.B. Du Bois was considered persona non grata in the United States of America and was kicked out of the country. And Du
Yes.
Bois took him, gave him a home, a car, and we now have he died there, he buried there, and the W.B. Du Bois Center is in Ghana.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yes. I'm looking forward. Is it? I hope it's in Accra, so I can see it when I go.
Yes, yes, yes. My good
September.
friend from Philadelphia is one of the managers of that center. Her name is Dr. Erica Bennett. You can let me know. I'll make sure you reach out to her
Okay.
when we travel, okay?
Yes. So we want to
And
thank our host, I mean, our guest today. This has been a wealth of knowledge. Even as you were talking and the Lord was saying, write down these names because, there are hardly any libraries right now in Africa. And like I said, one of the things I want to do with the library that I have is get some of these philosophers, get these. I only have, I only have Black books in Africa, books that were written by African Americans, and if we can get this knowledge in our children while they are still young, then they will grow up learning, knowing, and understanding their history. So, Reverend Pam says we have access to a Nobel laureate, Professor Wally. See, this is what I'm
so
saying.
Yinka, yeah, I was gonna say, Ambassador Lisa, can you guys hear me? Uh,
Yes.
Yes.
Honorable Stan, thank you so much. And of course, we want to thank our viewers, but I wanted to mention it's a good thing we stream this online. Nia Song, let me mute you for a second here. That we're streaming this. When you are ready to speak, Nia Song, you can unmute. Um, Ambassador Lisa, I'm sure when you listen to it, you can pick up. I don't know if you had AI. I don't know if I activated the AI note taker because the note taker will have all the names for you.
Oh,
Yeah, I will see at the end of the thing if it recorded it, but those names will be on there. Honorable Stan, thank you so much. You are a walking encyclopedia
yes.
of information that our young people need to know. And that's why you're the best. I don't know, you've been coming here yearly for I don't even know how many years. We are 10 and a half years on the air, and you have been a recurrent guest. Ambassador Lisa, I know he's had a certificate of appreciation before, but we need to give him another one. But Honorable Stan, thank you so much. I'm glad we have access to you, and we can
Yes.
use that your brain power. You know me, everybody who knows me know I like to gain brain cells. I like to gain knowledge. I like hanging around smart people. So it's always a pleasure to have you. And I'm looking forward to meeting you one of these days. We've been meeting virtually, but
Oh,
very soon we'll have to meet in person. So thank you so much. Ania, so Ambassador Lisa, I think we're ready for the round, right?
yeah. Well, no, we're going to do our anthem and we're
Okay.
going to do the announcements and then we're going to do the round of the table. So
All
at
right.
this time,
Can I do the announcement right now, please?
yes,
Before I
ma'am.
mute? Yeah, let me
Yes.
do that before I mute. So next week we're going to be talking about immigration, and to tell you the truth, immigration is a good sequel to this topic, believe it or not, because
Mm,
all what these colonial people did contributed to the exodus out of the country, out of the
mm.
continent. So I think that would be awesome, and so that's what we're going to be talking about. So over to you guys, anchors. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Stan, if you have someone that can come as a guest speaker for that, as a follow-up to this post-colonial, and as Reverend Pam said, that the reason we have so much immigration and people leaving the country is because of the post-colonialism that they are trying to escape in their country, we would be delighted.
Okay, I look into that. We have several people I could try to reach out for to see if they're available and get back to you on that. Okay.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and play our anthem. We're going to take a few minutes break, and then we're going to come right back and we're going to round up our conversation with the round of the table. So at this time, go grab a drink of water if that's what you need, and be back in less than 5 minutes.
But look at me going side to side. I look like a little spider. Oh my god.
Oh, Africa. Oh no. Africans, Africans for Africa. 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 Africans have many bright ideas. If only you let us share. If you really want to know my history, please come, sit down, listen to my story. God gave us a wisdom. He guides our footsteps, makes us shine and transform. Hey, as one people, with so many cultures, yet indeed we are one. Stand up, Africans, let's save Africa. Let us all unite behind AfricaOnline Media Corporation. Stand up, Africans, let's save Africa. It's time to come together, promote awareness, progress, and solution. Hey, Africans, Africans for Africa. Africans, Africans for Africa. Africans, Africans for Africa. All Africans can rally for a common cause, to believe without judgment in what our brother does, to identify and resolve our challenges, to allow each other's ideas without regard to standards. As one people with so many cultures, yes indeed we are one. Stand up, Africans, for Africa. Let us solve all the problems plaguing our continent. Stand up, Africans, let's save Africa. Let us empower Africans in and out of Africa. Stand up, Africans, for Africa. AfricaOnline Media Corporation, that's a good way to start. Stand up, Africans, let's save Africa. They have all the resources we need to benefit our society. Oh. Education for everyone. If we believe prosperity for Africans, if we believe medical facilitation for Africans, if we believe stand up, Africa, yes, for Africa. AfricaOnline Media Corporation, that's a good way to start. Stand up, Africans, let's save Africa. Africa is the cradle of civilization, the motherland. Stand up, Africans, for Africa. We were enslaved not because we were weak, but because of our hospitality. Stand up, Africans. Let's sing Africa. Jump on the AfricaOnline miracle jet. Don't be left behind. Stand up, Africans, for Africa. Together we shall succeed. Together we will win. Stand up, Africans. Let's sing Africa. We are writing our own story. The truth, and we shall tell it to the world. Stand up, Africans, for Africa. No more lies. Africans own Africa.
No more lies. Africans own Africa. And we in the diaspora, we're part of that African family. So we need to get back on to where we need to get back to the basics and go back and begin to study. And I'm not going to give my last round because I'm going to give that over to Nia Sung to call on me to do that. Professor, welcome back. Welcome back, Stan. The Honorable Stan Straughter.
Thank you. Honorable Stan, appreciate everything you do. Unfortunately, I've been so quiet today. I'm feeling very, very blocked. So all the same, I appreciate all what you have done. Give us your last word and we will wrap it up. After, no, just hold on. It's Ambassador Lisa who will go first. Then yes, we will come to you last.
Thank you.
Definitely not feeling well.
Thank you, Professor Nia Sung. Well, this has been a wonderful conversation talking about post-colonialism, what it is, what it looks like, and how we can move forward past it. It begins with education. Now, a lot of us want to send our kids to school and let them get educated there and think that it's the teacher's job. But education, true education, begins at home. So I want to encourage you, parents, whether you are on the continent or here in the diaspora, get some of these books that the Honorable Stan has mentioned. Find out who the philosophers and the deep thinkers are in your country and begin to study them and begin to share them with your children so that we can have pride in the place that we call home. Again, join AfricaOnline every Sunday from 4 to 5. Every Sunday right here, talking about a variety of topics that will bless, encourage, and educate those of us on the continent and those of us in the diaspora. Like us and share our Facebook and or YouTube, and tell a friend to join the conversation every Sunday. Thank you so much, Nia Sung. It's over to you.
Thank you very much. Your Excellency, are you going to say something, at least to wrap up? Your Royal Highness?
I would say I'm
Honorable Stan, I apologize that I wasn't active on the call due to circumstances beyond my control, but thank you again for your faithfulness. We'll continue to learn from brilliant minds like yours, and we know that the impact is immeasurable. I hope to see you next week as we talk about immigration, which I think is a good sequel to this topic. And I want to thank Ambassador Lisa and Nia Sung for their faithfulness. Over to you, Nia Sung. No, one quick thing. We may say we have independence. We recently talked about independence versus freedom, but the seeds that the colonial masters planted, they are still producing fruits, especially in the minds of our people. So I want to take a moment to encourage our people, detox your mind from all those colonial poison. Detox it. And remember that the future of Africa is in our hands. And that's why our anthem, which Ambassador Lisa loves so much, say, Africans for Africa. And it says, stand up for Africa. And when we talk about Africa, we're talking about all people of African descent. Thank you so much, Nelson.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And we turn to Honorable Stan. Please take your time and give us a wrap up as much as you can.
Thank you very much. And first and foremost, let me thank each of you, especially Reverend Pam, because without this platform, who would hear or who would even know no matter how brilliant we are, the information has to get out there. I'm very, very old, and I can remember back in the day when we even had a mimeograph machine. I don't even know if your
We don't
listeners
know what that is. We don't even, I don't know what that is.
but that was
I
in.
do. I started my city career working on a mimeograph machine.
But that's how important the communication is, the opportunity
Yes.
to link, and that's why this is such a vital communication link that you have here. And so I don't want you or any of your audience to take it lightly. It's critical
Thank
for
you.
us to get our story out, for them to hear and be able to go get other information like the books we talked about. So this is important, and I want to thank you for all of your hard work and personal sacrifice to make this over 10 years for keeping us here and inviting me back. It's so important to me in my work. So thank you, thank you, thank you for that, Reverend Pam, and the team you have here, number one. Number
Thank
two,
you.
I think in reference to education, Professor, I'm sorry, Prophet has talked about the education. It is important. It is the one thing that people are trying to get us away from. Remember, slaves were not permitted to learn how to read and write.
Yes.
It's
That's
Yes.
like,
right. It was a
okay,
crime.
you imagine what happened. Remember when even our people, our ancestors came off the plantations, they had nothing. But guess what? They built universities, historically black universities. They built them with nothing. Pennies,
Hmm.
nickels, and dime. They
Yes.
believed so fervently in the importance of education. And they succeeded because when in 1865, when Black Reconstruction, and you might want to read Dr. W.B. Du Bois's book on Black Reconstruction, when Black Reconstruction was ushered in, he writes about what happened and great universities were set up and how those young people and even older people became, for the first time in history, out of slavery, just out of slavery with less than a decade, they became members, elected members to the United States Senate and the House of Representatives. They became judges and all that. So it tells you how important education is, even in an overly depressed environment. Number two. So we must continue to struggle for quality education for our people, for all people, particularly because the information they try to keep us from, they don't even want white people to understand it or know about
Right.
it. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
So I'm not as fervent as I am about supporting Black education. I want white people to be educated too, because at least we can sit down and have an educated dialogue and study the documentation and the history. You know, these are the kind of things we want our people, our young people, to be able to do around the world. And this is something that we all struggle for. I can remember in the 50s and 60s, Reverend Pan, we had freedom schools here across the
Mm.
United States and in the South. I didn't learn this stuff going to school every day. I come home, went to the freedom school, and the guys that taught it, the historians were there, would teach us this stuff and tell us how to read. You just can't go rap on a corner about this or that. Where did you get it from? What book did you read? And we had to study those books, and be able to not only to defend but to educate others. We had the responsibility for educating those people younger than us, and it went on and on and on. And I never lost that thing. And so our work is still yet to be done, but we still have to continue to educate new people, especially youth, because they are the future. They are our future,
Yes.
and they're actually the future of the world. We are right now witnessing on the African continent. The average age is 17, 18 years old. There's 1.4 billion people in 54 countries on the African continent. What do you think is going to do within a decade of here? Who are they going to sell those goods and services to? Who's going to buy them? Who's going to set up the factories? Where are they coming from?
Right.
All of it is Africa's. This is Africa's thousand-year century coming forward, whether they want it or not. That's why in Europe and also here in the United States, they're paying white people to have babies. They're
Hmm.
paying them to have babies.
That's
Even
true.
even across Asia and Japan,
Yeah.
the
Hmm.
birth rates are declining. You know, God in his infinite wisdom says, y'all, if you just do nothing, it's we gonna win anyway. But
That's
I
true.
don't want that. I don't want us to give up the struggle, because the struggle that we have to do now is the mind. We have to cleanse our minds, regain our intellect, become the scholars that our world has seen of Black people historically thousands and thousands of years ago. So this is a wonderful medium. I certainly appreciate your permission, providing me permission to be here. Anytime I can make it for any of you, I'm certainly want to be here. And let me just announce for those people that may be in the greater Philadelphia area, on Sunday, July 26th, from 3 to 5, we're celebrating a Swahili Heritage Festival here in Philadelphia in collaboration with the Embassy of the United Republic of Tanzania, with my Africa Town, which I'm part of, Odunde Akana. We're hosting this in Philadelphia at 55th and Chester. The ambassador
Wonderful.
from the ambassador from Tanzania came and saw it as an opportunity to talk about her language, Swahili, and there's something about 250 million people that speak this language, and she's trying to help to keep it going and not to lose it. And it's
Yes.
a program inconsistent with the United Nations Decade of the Language that we're working with on. So if you're here,
Oh,
if you're going to be in the
wow.
neighborhood, feel free to come. We're doing other things here in Africa Town and across the Greater Philadelphia region, and anything we can do to help you, Reverend Pam, of course, Lisa, please let us know. And thank you again for allowing us to be on this platform. And we look forward to joining you very soon. Okay.
Thank
Yeah,
you,
so
Yes.
before you say anything,
Honorable.
Honorable
Yes,
Stan, I'm going to reach out to one of our former mayors, actually the Secretary General of the World Conference of Mayors, Honorable Ghana. He wrote a book called Africa Town. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it or not. I will reach out to him. Ambassador Lisa, if you can get the information about this event. But Ambassador Lisa also sent information to Honorable Stan about the event in Ghana. If he can make it, we would love to honor him. I know I have his number, but I need some help with some other
Okay.
stuff. So if you can send it to him. All right,
Yes.
Niason.
And Stan, if there's a flyer for the 26th, just text it to me.
Okay.
thank you. Thank
You'll
you
have it soon.
all. Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Honorable Stan. Thank you to ourselves for doing what we do. Please let us not get tired. Let us thank the Almighty for giving us the strength to be able to do this. And we will continue to work for the African continent and for all Black people the world over. That being said, next Sunday, immigration. It is a big deal. So thank you all. And please, let's have a great weekend and see